The U.S. Department of Energy is cleaning up the Oak Ridge Reservation of residual hazardous and radioactive contamination left over as a result of decades of nuclear energy research. Much of that work has been influenced by the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board, a citizens panel that provides independent advice and recommendations on DOE's cleanup operations. You're welcome to attend the meetings and be part of this important work. For more information, call us or visit our website.
All right, everyone, welcome tonight for the March the 8th meeting. We'll open the meeting tonight. We'll go straight to Mr. Millis. Mr. Millis, any comment?
I'll be in my happy place. Actually, I did that in E-Tech as well. That said, and here, today, what's it like to be back? Talk to us all about that. So, well, first of all, thanks for coming tonight. It's good to see all y'all again, and I certainly appreciate the time you put here in for us. Several of my staff, just a few updates before we get started with the budget piece, but a few of my staff and I, some of the TDEC and EPA folks went out to waste management last week. It was interesting because it's been a couple of years since they've really had full waste management, had a record number of people. There are 28,000 folks. We did a couple, wow. Yeah. And we did a couple of panels there. One of which focused very much on the partnership between UCOR, Isotech, EPA, TDEC, and the advancements we've had because of that partnership. And certainly appreciate TDEC and EPA folks that participated in that. But I think it just goes to show how well everybody's starting to work accomplishments, the things that can be achieved. So I certainly appreciate our regulatory agencies participating in that, and it's being starting to be recognized as a best practice that we might get export to other EM locations. So time will tell on that, but we're certainly happy about that. I think last time when I was here, I mentioned that I thought we were pretty close to having an announcement coming out of the History Center from the Corps of Engineers. Looks like that should be next week. We'll have an announcement on who they're selecting as the contractor and set up a groundbreaking for that probably in early April. So we have to get that message out. So I know that's been a long time coming, and we'll certainly be happy to finally get that project underway and look forward to that complimentary piece to the History Center. Lastly, we do have an event planned in mid-April, April 11th, Pilot Auditorium, which is focused on our U-233 project and the cancer research or the support for the isotopes there for cancer research and cancer treatment. There'll be representatives from private companies that are involved in that, and we hope to get some of the leadership out of EM headquarters down for that. And obviously, we'll invite the congressional delegation from Tennessee and see how hopefully Congressman Western, at the very least, to show up for that. We've done something like this summer in the past. We actually had a Senator Blackburn there as well. So we have to get that kind of turn out. So with that, I'll turn it over for our next speaker.
Thank you. Yeah. Speaker, no, thank you. I can't see the names. Is there anyone for EPA online?
Yes, this is Samantha. I had planned to be there in person, but I'm not feeling well, so I'm joining in by Zoom. Thank you for including me in this meeting. We've spent several of EPA staff have been here this week for the Oak Ridge partnering team meeting, and as well as the EIT meeting, and it's been really good being able to see people face to face and be able to talk on the side about, different issues going on and, just talk informally amongst ourselves as we've gone along. We made a lot of progress this week. DOE has achieved a construction complete at one of the operable units in ETTP. They've signed an action memo for the ponds and have started and completed the removal action in the mud flats. So we've there have been a lot of accomplishments, and there's lots of work going on. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to work on this project. It's been challenging, but very rewarding. So thank you again.
Thank you for joining us. Christoph?
I have no comments.
Thank you so much. Go straight to the presentation portion for the FY 2025 budget request. Issue group will be Butler, Connor, Jones, Sloman, McCurdy, Sharp, and Shields. Tonight's presenter will be Ms. Karen Thompson. She's branch chief of planning, the baseline management branch for the Oak Ridge Office of the Environmental Management. In this capacity, she supports the division director and the associate director of the planning and execution divisions of the integrated project teams and strategic planning, budget development, and performance tracking and reporting. Previously to her selection in November 2014, she was a project control lead for the East Tennessee Technology Park work scope. She's also served as the K-25 Historical Preservation Coordinator between July of 2012 and 2015. Ms. Thompson, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me here. Please be patient with me with this thing here. I want to talk to you real tonight about the budget process, how we develop a budget, what's in our 22 and 23, what we accomplished in 22, what we plan to accomplish in 23. Unfortunately, FY 24 has not been released by the President of Congress. So you'll see I'm not allowed to talk to you about that, but it's still an opportunity for you to send in what you think we need to do, because we're going to be starting the 25 formulation process. So we really value your input and we actually use that information. So please be encouraged to do that. Which one? Oh, there you go. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. You think I never saw one of these before, but so I'm going to go real quickly through the federal budget process. At the high level, each cabinet level department submits a budget to the Office of Management and Budget. OMB actually takes all those budgets and they consolidate the department budgets. They go through, they prioritize in accordance with what the administration's priorities are. And then the president approves the budget and submits it to Congress. That's what we're waiting on before we can talk to 24. Once it goes to Congress, it's farmed out to subcommittees and they develop bills for each house. And they'll adjust numbers based on their priorities. And then the appropriation committees, once they're in agreement, they approve a bill and they send it to the floors, to the Senate and the House floor to be voted on. And that's kind of an iterative process. We get something called the passbacks, and it'll be we'll get adjustments. And then once all that's done, we get marks in the middle of the congressional review that kind of are indicators of what the priorities are for the House and the Senate. And then eventually there is a bill that goes to the president to be signed, preferably for all of us. That happens before September the 30th, but lots of times it doesn't. And we have a continuing resolution. So before all that happens, each individual office develops a budget. For Oak Ridge EM, we actually maintain a plan in our life cycle planning that reflects our priorities, the work scope that we all need to do. We have developed a comprehensive plan for all of the work from now through the end of the FFA in 2047. We start with that because that reflects the priorities that we have. And then we take that, we look at it and we identify any differences. So if we completed a project early, you know, we can move some other work in. And if we complete something late, something has to move out. That's kind of how it works. And then sometimes there's changes in priority. If there's an administration change, there might be a change in priority. And so we would reflect all that in the process of building our budget. The next thing that we do once we come up with that plan is we actually look at our work and we categorize it into 4 categories. The things that we have to do to make the safe and compliant, to maintain safe and compliant operations. That's always our number 1 priority. Then we look at what all do we need to do to meet our regulatory commitments. We look at what do we need to do to be able to do future work. And then we look at, okay, what do we need to do to continue on with the work that we have going on? And then we take all that and we get a planning target from headquarters that says the department has X dollars. Oak Ridge gets this many dollars per year. And that's normally for a 5-year budget window. And then we take and we rewrite that work in accordance with that categorization to fit within that dollar value. And then we look at the difference between our overall plan and the revised based on the target. And that's how we come up and we quantify our impacts. Sometimes we get more, so we can pull more work in, and sometimes we get less, and so we have to push things out. So that's how we develop a budget. So Oak Ridge is a little bit complicated. We have in the 22 and 23 budgets, we had 2 appropriations, defense and non-defense, and then we have the equivalent of 10 bank accounts. And once we get dollars assigned to those bank accounts, we have to perform the scope that's assigned in those bank accounts, or we have to go back and request it be moved by Congress. So it's pretty rigid when it comes in and it's assigned to one of those appropriation accounts. We don't have a lot of flexibility there. So in 22, under the uranium enrichment, under the U-233 project, we completed startup of the U-233 building 2026 hot cells. This year we received $55.6 million, and we will we actually began processing in the hot cells, and we plan to complete 25 canisters. For the next account, the transuranic disposition, we got $62 million this year. In 22, we were able to, we continued operations at the True Waste Processing Center. We actually recently transitioned that from Northwind to UCOR. So we've already accomplished that in 23. And then we completed construction of an on-site sludge test area. For this year in 23, we plan to continue our operations at the True Waste Processing Center, which supports shipments to WIP. And then we will begin testing at the on-site sludge test area. And the purpose behind this is to approve the technologies that we need to sometimes design and construct a sludge processing facility. The next account that we have is the Safeguards and Security account. Basically, that funds cybersecurity, it funds guards, that kind of thing. And we got $14 million this year. Last year, these are continual services. So it provides safeguards and security services for our sites and our work scope at all the sites. The next account is where we do the S&M and operations and the cleanup at Y12 and OREM. We got $334.2 million to split between the S&M and operations. Operations there includes the EMWMF and all the landfill operations are in this account. And then the liquid gases and processed waste operations at OREM. We last year operated EMWMF and LGWO, and then we continued activities to extend the life of LGWO, and we also performed some enhanced surveillance and maintenance at the molten salt reactor experiment. In 23, we of course will continue operations of EMWMF in the landfills that supports our cleanup operations, and we'll continue operations at the liquid gases and processed waste ops facilities at OREM. And we're also continuing those life extension activities for LGWO and the enhanced S&M at MSRE. Here we go. Okay, so the second part of what that $330 million funds is the cleanup. So at Y12 and OREM in FY22, we continued the remediation of the biology area. We actually completed deactivation in 9213. We continue to work on multiple high-risk facilities at Y12. And then we completed deactivation of excess reactors 3005 and 3010 at OREM. And we also continued deactivation of some excess facilities and some hot cell facilities at Oak Ridge National Lab. And then this year we plan to actually complete remediation, and we transferred the biology footprint back to NNSA. We will continue the deactivation of the facilities that we started at Y12 and OREM. And then we're going to complete demolition of 3005 and 3010. And then that's at Oak Ridge National Lab. And then we're going to continue the deactivation of the other contaminated facilities that we're working on in hot cells at OREM. And then we also received $10 million for the mercury treatment facility. That's going to allow us to continue our construction, including the micropile installation at the headwork site and the structural steel at the treatment plant. So that'll continue for a couple more years. And then EMDF, we received $35 million. Last year we finished we continued the final design activities. And then this year we're going to initiate early site prep activities. And then we're working on the planning for groundwater field demonstration. The next account, we have $3 million. That is for mercury technology development activities. It's focused primarily on understanding soil and groundwater source control, and that will continue into this year. That's an ongoing thing. And then regulatory support, which is PBS 100, that funds the state of Tennessee grants, the FFA, and of course the activities that are happening here. And then if you see the blue areas, those are uranium enrichment D&D fund activities. Only Oak Ridge, Fort Smith, and Paducah receive that type of funding. And we received $92.9 million this year. That's slightly down from last year, but it supports where we're getting out of ETTP. We're continuing remediation of slabs and soils there, and other activities that get us toward completing ETTP and transferring that site for long-term stewardship. And then we also fund out of the UED&D fund post-retirement life, medical, and pensions for former contractor employees, and that will continue. So for the total program, we got $637 million in FY23. So our OREM's priorities haven't changed in the last several years. Our priorities are to complete ETTP remediation, to demolish excess contaminated facilities at Oak Ridge National Lab and Y12. We have to construct the infrastructure to enable us to continue our cleanup mission, which includes the mercury treatment facility and the on-site circular cell. We're continuing with the disposition of the U-233 material at Oak Ridge National Lab, and the legacy transuranics contact handled and remote handled debris and sludges, and we always our highest priorities are to maintain and operate facilities at OREM and Y12 safely. And then, so I've already told you that the 24 budget is embargoed. It used to roll out the second week in February. The last couple of years that hadn't happened. So we're prohibited from discussing it. But we would love to have your input. You have the opportunity to provide input into the 25 formulation. That cycle will start in the next couple of months. And it's continuous. It's continuous. And so I know you guys usually send in a letter. And so please look at our priorities and use the information that we shared so that you can do that. Yeah. That's all there is on here. I just don't know what to do.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you.
So let's start off our normal routine. We'll start with the board members in the room. If you have any questions, please just raise your placard at the end of the table. And then once we get done with the room, we'll go online. I'll need Ms. Sarah and Ms. Shelley's help to tell me who's raised their hands. So any questions in the room? Certainly.
I realize the budgeting process is pretty standard, but I'm wondering the targets that you get, can you debate that or negotiate them, or are they just a hard number that you have to deal with each year based on the 5-year plan?
I'm sure there is discussion, but we don't normally participate in that. So
they
give
you a number and that's just it.
And we plan to that number.
So
we
if you want to be aggressive, you can.
Well, the president's budget is my budget.
So I think the way to answer that, Harold, is we'll get targets that we have to meet. And typically, this is not every year, typically we'll be told in some form or fashion. It changes. How it's done has been different every year I've been involved in it. But in essence, you'll be told, here's your target for Oak Ridge. Don't plan to that. They'll give you in some way a higher target or an over target and then an under target. And sometimes that's done as a percentage. Sometimes that's done as a dollar value. Sometimes that is done in turn, even get to the detail. Don't assume you're getting any more defense, but what if you had
Yeah.
And there'll be a budget workshop, and there's one coming up in April that we'll travel up to, and a lot of that kind of discussion to formulate the 25 budget will come along. And we submit that, and, as part of the over target, if I got, 50 million more, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
This is what I would do. So
But
typically
you
for
do get a chance to do that.
yes, and typically for Oak Ridge, we'll go up there with what we call sand charts, mountain charts is what some people call them, and all three of those, and be able to talk about, if you cut it by X percent, you cut it by this much money. Here's what here's how it pushes it out. Here's how many people it affects. Here's what I don't do.
Good.
Here's the resequencing.
Good. That's what I was
Here's what I can buy back. So we've been actually, part of that's because of the help we've had out of the appropriators as well. But so I don't want to diminish that and say it's just because of how great Jay and Alan and Karen are.
Well, your accomplishments speak for themselves.
Thank you. But the appropriators have certainly helped get us more funds, and we've been fairly successful in Oak Ridge. I think the big question is going to be what we're hearing out of Congress is the House of Representatives is in a cutting mood. We did have approached staff from both sides, minority and majority, in town a couple of weeks ago and talked to them, and I asked them point blank, "What are you hearing?" And they said nothing right now, which is kind of concerning, and we're not sure which way it's going to go. So it'll be interesting to see what goes through the budget cycle for 24, which is one of the reasons we haven't got 24 back yet, to be able to release, and then what happens for 25 formulation. So, and of course, President's budget is what we plan to, and what we do in Congress is what we execute. Because those have been very different for Oak Ridge over the last, since 15, 16 time frame. First time we got a big plus up, we weren't anticipating it and didn't put it to work quick enough. So we've, and to the ire of the approach staff at the time. So we've gotten a bit more nimble about that kind of thing. And so we do have a list of work we can bring back. Part of this, we have to get get it on contract to be able to execute it. And Karen talked about this a little bit, but don't underestimate the difficulty in some cases of if you get money in bins that you didn't need it in, but don't get it in other bins, which can happen. That's not unheard of. And we can't move it around.
Right.
Overall has over 200 control points. Now, control point is something that we don't get to move money between control points. And then on top of that, CFO imposes, I forget what they call them, they're in effect control points as well. Those, at least, all you have to do is convince the CFO. But EM has a lot in control points.
Thank you, Jim.
Ms. Mary?
What is our role? How do we help you?
Hearing what your priorities are, that helps us to look at what we have planned. For example, we know that groundwater is important to you guys, and it also helps us look at what we have planned and better show, hey, this is in our planning. It's just at a lower level. But knowing what your priorities are helps us know that we're doing the work that is important to this community. I mean, that is our goal. And so in planning, we keep a list of those things. We take your letters and we share those letters. And when we look at the planning, we make sure, and Roger makes sure especially, that we make sure we include all this.
We'll submit something called a requirements budget as well. It never gets funded that I'm aware of, but the requirements budget is what you would have to do all the milestones that I'm planning goes on.
Oh, the completion?
Yes. And so, what that year's is. So everybody submits a requirement, so everybody gets a target, and there's often quite a bit of delta. Right. And I know the regulators find that frustrating. And I know others find that frustrating. That's just part of the back and forth with Congress and with the OMB exam as well. So the president's budget, we'll go back and forth a couple of times with the OMB exam as well. Typically, if the OMB examiner will have he or she is trying to do their best to make sure getting what you need, but you're spending that smartly as well. And so there's a process there as well that goes in before the final budget goes. So there's a lot of effort that goes into that. Goes into formulation. Unfortunately, some sites have signed, how it is. Mortgage grows, right? If you didn't estimate, we're not the best at estimating, especially when you're trying to estimate what something's going to cost 30 years from now. So we tend to underestimate that pretty consistently. Right? I mean, if you'd asked me 3 years ago, we would have done 2.5% inflation, right? As growth. I certainly didn't recognize there's going to be 6-8% inflation. So that hasn't completely been factored in either. So it will be interesting as that starts to be factored in what that's going to do to budgets as well. In essence, it's a tax, right? So you may get a flat budget, which is a pretty good budget, but in essence, it's 8% less than it was last year, 6% less.
Any other questions, Mr. Connor?
Yeah, I was just wondering, since we're doing a lot of work now at the NNSA side and the Office of Science, what is that impact on the budgeting process?
It hasn't had a direct impact, but we've done a very good job, and I'll give you quite a bit of credit for that, reaching out to science and NSA. If you went back 5 or 6 years ago, I think you would have seen a lot of competition between the three entities here, the three being science and NSA. You don't see that now, at least locally. There's a lot of support for each other and a lot of advocacy that goes on, but there's not a direct, at least that I've seen, a direct negative or positive impact as far as.
I would think it'd be positive.
Generally, it is, but I'm just saying I haven't seen from an advocacy perspective, yes, but I've not seen a direct, hey, you need to give this much too,
right?
Type thing. Now, maybe I just don't see that, Harold. Right? I mean, I don't see everything that goes on at the headquarters level, but certainly here locally between Johnny, Lisa, and myself, there's quite a bit of support. It's a very good working relationship, and I would say the same for Ken at UCOR, Gene Severs over at the NSA, I guess now Jeff Smith again. Thank you.
Any other questions in the room? Ms. Hurry.
I'm trying to get in my mind, it's a federal budget. Who are the competitors for the nickels and dimes that Oak Ridge needs? Are the various sites that are doing cleanup in direct competition with each other? Or is it whose senator can make the most noise?
Well, obviously, I mean, the appropriators have a great impact on the budget, right? And if you have when Senator Alexander was there, we enjoyed a very strong advocacy because of the years he had spent there, the positions he held as an appropriator. We're hoping that Congressman Fleshman, he should be able to help in that, given his role now as a senior appropriator, right? He's in, I guess, what they call a cardinal position, terminology, right? So that should be good for Oak Ridge. But obviously, a number of the sites have pretty powerful senators or congressmen, right? Patty Murray out in Hanford, but yes. So used to, we had 2 pretty significant pots of money here, the UED&D fund, which we could use at UTP, and defense funds, which we use for cleanup at Watchwell and Larnell, and you can't mix the two. A number of years ago, the appropriators recognized that we were finishing up or going to finish up at ETP and would be needing to move on Watchwell and Larnell. And so you saw budget growth there. And our overall budget has grown quite a bit, while the UED&D money has gone down. The defense funds get spent, I mean, think about the name, it gets spent for all cleanup at any site that was related to defense, including DoD sites, and it competes with defense funds that fund defense. And then you've got competition in that pot of money between the different EM sites. And you've got needs at Hanford, for instance, that are huge and growing, right, as they start up that way. So it becomes $8 billion seems like a huge budget until you start looking at how much all the different sites pay for operations and the things that are starting up at different sites. So it's not, and then you factor in the politics of, you know, what senator or congressman is at one side, and it's not an easy dance.
Yeah, it sounds like it's hot rocks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Ms. Shelley, Ms. Sarah, we have
I have not seen any on the Zoom.
anyone online have any questions? Just raise your hand. Okay.
How about me?
Mr. Gleaser, any questions? I forgot, Jessica.
What can I be heard of this?
I can hear you now.
You can hear me.
You're good right there.
Okay,
So this is a question about the presentation.
it's a question about the presentation. I have a public comment later that's related to the presentation, but I've got a couple questions now. So there's a major category still defense, environmental, and the UED&D fund, and a little bit for non-defense.
Yes, sir. We didn't get in 22 or 23, we didn't get any new money for non-defense, but yes, sir. That's correct.
That's a small amount of money. I think it's just a history center or something, right?
Yes, sir. That's historic preservation stuff.
Okay, on the pension thing, the pension is a multi-employer plan that includes grandfathered employees that live in Portsmouth.
Yes, sir.
Is that all Oak Ridge money, or is Lexington contribute to?
Are you talking about the 25 million?
There's 25 million you had there for 23.
Yes, sir. That's a Oak Ridge plan.
Right, and you of course lead of a multi-employer contract that involves D&D and the site infrastructure. Not that you have 6 people up there, right?
Right.
So they have to contribute something to the second round Lexington office budget if they have to contribute any.
I honestly don't know the answer.
I need to find out the answer to that, but I believe it does, and it's administered all out of one office. But I can find that out for you.
Okay.
I apologize. I don't.
There was quite a bit of discussion several years ago about trying to segregate those out. I don't know whatever actually became.
Yeah, I don't remember.
We'll have to get
Well,
back
I
to
mean, there's 5 employers in the ATP multi-employer plan.
this. There are.
Yeah, thank you. I think I see a hand up. What's the name of it?
Yes, Christine Michaels does have a question.
Ms. Michaels?
Hi, everyone. Sorry I can't be there in person, but I just had a question. I think it was alluded to briefly earlier about different buckets of money. Are you able, if you have any savings in one area, to request that get applied to a different area, or does everything have its own line item and it stays in that line item? Over or under, I guess, would be my question.
We can ask to reprogram dollars, but it requires, headquarters has some authority. It's very limited, but most of those requests have to go back through Congress.
So theoretically, the answer
Oh, wow.
The answer is yes, we could request the reprogramming. The reality is that typically takes about as long as getting the next budget for the next year. And so normally,
Wow.
that'll be taken care of through that process. I mean, think about it. We've requested a budget from their perspective. We've requested a budget. Now we've underrun or overrun, and we want to take money from another area and move it there. Obviously, there's going to be quite a bit of scrutiny on that and quite a bit of discussion to occur. So it's usually a fairly lengthy process just to get it out of the department over to Congress, and then they have their questions. And I can appreciate that. Because we've supposedly done a lot of work formulating the budget and gone back and forth with our examiner. And so I can appreciate why they might wonder, why are you underrunning here and overrunning there? Now, there is a little bit of ability to move money around. Typically what happens for us is we have what's called carryover, which is carried in the next year, and they'll give us less money next year in that particular pot.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions online?
I'm aware of.
Ms. Thompson, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
On the floor for any public comment.
If I might,
Yes, sir.
yeah, just one thing. There was a question, I forget who asked about what can y'all do? And Karen gave a very good answer, but the other piece of that is advocacy, right? So, you know, I can't advocate. I can answer congressional inquiries. I can approach staff questions that come in. But I can't, you know, we can't advocate. We can't campaign for anything. And so it's very important if you have particular things you want, you know, advocate for it is what I'll be telling you. So not just to us, but you can advocate as a citizen of ours as well. So,
Nothing further, we'll go to public comment. Ms. Shelley?
Luther has public comment.
Yes.
Mr. Luther, go ahead.
Okay, where should I be? Just anywhere?
In fact, about where you were was good. You were on the camera. You got 3 minutes.
Okay, my name's Luther Gibson. I was ORSSAB member from 1999 to 2005 and board chair in 2001 and 2002. I'm a retired DOE contract employee with 40 plus years of service, and I'm currently vice president of the Coalition of Oak Ridge Retired Employees. President Biden will reportedly release the FY24 budget tomorrow. Good timing for this meeting, right? He's circumventing a statutory requirement that it should have been released the first Monday in February. It appears likely that the detailed backup justification material for each agency, including the Department of Energy, will trickle out at their leisure. In fact, I watched all this last year, and DOE did not release all of its information until mid to late April. And it was like watching paint dry to visit the website daily and see which pages they chose to post that day. As an experienced observer and stakeholder participant in this process, I have knowledge of previous history. The February 2002 public involvement calendar saved the date of Monday, February 4th, 2002 for public involvement activities surrounding the release of the 2003 budget. There was video conferencing arrangements made with Washington there at AMC, and DOE Public Affairs facilitated distribution of copy material and an opportunity to discuss what was in it. And then on Thursday, February 14th of that year, a budget workshop was held similar to this with DOE Environmental Management and the jointly sponsored by DOE Environmental Management and the Oak Ridge Site Pacific Advisory Board. And all that going on, the board still had a regular monthly meeting on Wednesday of that week, where it brought in DOE and TDEC to explain the issues in a dispute over requiring treatment of hazardous component of mixed transuranic waste being stored for shipment to WIP. Well, you remember that, don't you, Christoph? This shows that more than one issue may deserve attention during a month. That's a little bit constructive criticism, looking at the board to handle more than one thing at a time. But anyhow, returning to the public involvement on the budget, the FY24 budget request could contain surprises as in any year. And you may, I don't know whether you know them or not, you can't talk about them until tomorrow or whenever the J books come out. But, recently I haven't seen the urgency, as you'll see funding cut in there and some projects even defunded. And somehow the money nearly always gets restored. We should be in a good position with given who the House Energy and Water Appropriations Subcommittee chair is. And he's been an advocate for things like this, the new EMDF and things like that. But he also has a bill introduced called, I think it's some cost cutters, bonus for cost cutters or something. He introduces it every year. He's been in Congress. But for federal employees, going to cost cuts to increase the bonuses that they can receive. But anyhow, I think Jay made a good comment there that we want to be able to discuss, or I would at least, the 2024 budget, the shortfalls in it, and have more detailed questions answered so we can go elsewhere and advocate for you if we have to.
Thank you, Luther. All right, Ms. Shelley, any other public comments?
We did have a write-in public comment. It was concerning some trail maintenance, and that gentleman has been responded to as far as that was the National Park Service, I believe. Melissa would correct me if I'm wrong. Was it not?
No, Office of Science, they handle the maintenance.
The Office of Science handles the issue he was requesting, but you will have that public comment in your packet for the record. We will also continue accepting public comments through Monday.
Thank you. Nothing further. We'll go to the agenda item 5, call for the additions or motion to approve the agenda. Do we have a form yet?
We actually do not have a quorum, so we will postpone the vote on the meeting minutes until next month.
Okay. We'll talk about the details here. Request for the new action items. Next meeting will be March 22nd to discuss the DOE fiscal year 2025 budget development. The board meets next May the 10th to discuss the East Tennessee Technology Park main plant groundwater remedy selections. Thank you again for the presentation. We're going to go into the next part of the meeting. Anyone wishes to leave can do so. We'll open up tonight for the board business. Ms. Melissa, do you want to comment on the DEFO report?
We don't have any current open recommendations, and I don't have anything else on.
Thank you so much. Mr. Sharp, you want to comment on EM?
Yep. So we'll be real brief. We had our meeting over the waste disposal facility, so it felt like it was a pretty good conversation with DOE. I know just some highlights. I know DOE stated they don't plan to change their models, but if they do, they would communicate that out to us. So looking forward to that. Tree clearing is scheduled to begin this year. I thought that was a pretty cool takeaway. And no recommendations from the committee at this time, but I do want to state that, a recommendation could come in the future if we decided to revisit that topic. And that's it from me.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. A couple of things to discuss before we close. The public tour, or the tour for the board members, for the new board members exclusively. But if you're a veteran member, haven't been there in a while online and in here, April the 6th will be that tour. If you'd like to go on one of those tours, please contact Ms. Shelley on that date for the information and times. Mr. Mullis had mentioned a presentation on April the 11th. So that'll be the two things that will happen between now and the May 10th meeting. Anything else come from the board tonight? Do I have a motion for him? We'll adjourn. We'll have to make a motion to adjourn. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.